All right, that looks fine. And that looks fine. All right, so let's go back to the Law of Self-Defense Platinum member questions. It's one of the benefits of being a Law of Self-Defense Platinum member is you have a Platinum member only form you can use to submit questions directly to me and get them answered directly by me. So Jim from California writes, tonight I had the opportunity to chat with a local, recently retired attorney with the Orange County, California DA's office. My issue of only one side being presented to a grand jury without defendant's rebuttal, as you've taught me, was met with that is their responsibility to tell both sides completely and therefore fair. Okay. You should ask a public defender in that same jurisdiction how they feel about it. While I did not get into cases or examples, this is a very conservative, God-fearing, loving man I'm speaking with who has no reason to lie and is on the precipice of leaving California and the U.S. for Mexico to live with a predictable system, getting away from California. I bring this to you both as a question on your strict framing of the state's system and an opportunity to further address how the system works. I find the entire grand jury system, as you've presented it, to be a travesty, to be corrected, and while to act with extreme caution and understand the impact of the mere statement of indicted by the grand jury sways juries. How do we ensure all evidence is presented? Of course, this leads into how much of the defense do you choose to present at this phase? Obviously, the entire grand jury system has weighed on me since you enlightened me, and I've raised this with many people, sharing that a grand jury indictment is no more than a rubber stamp, correct? Based on one side's info and unfair, not to be trusted or have guilt associated with it. Yet without provocation, this now retired attorney challenges that belief. While I'd like your direct personal feedback, I present this as an opportunity for additional teaching. Okay, Jim. A prosecutor who's honorable and is actually seeking justice should present a grand jury with both narratives, and they can do that if they want to. So in the Michael Brown shooting, the hands up, don't shoot shooting, the officer who fired those shots, who killed Michael Brown, his case was put up in front of a grand jury, and the local prosecutor there did present both the narrative of guilt and the narrative of innocence to that grand jury. And that grand jury refused to indict, returned a no true bill on that officer. So he was never charged, never had to go to trial. But that prosecutor did that because he chose to. He chose to use his discretion to present both sides. He's not required to. And in fact, that prosecutor, who had been the prosecutor in that jurisdiction for something like 30 years, he'd been the elected DA in that jurisdiction forever. Literally generations of ADAs had gone through his office while he was the head of it. And he presented both sides of the narrative to that grand jury in the Michael Brown shooting. And the next time he ran for election, he got beat by a young black attorney financed by George Soros, who ran on the promise of reopening that shooting case. So that guy lost a 30-year career because he chose to do the right thing and present the grand jury with both sides. What message do you think that sends to other DAs in similar situations? You think they're going to be inclined to present both sides when they don't have to, knowing it could cost them a multi-decade career? They could be driven out of office because George Soros decides to drop a couple $100,000 in funding for an opposing candidate. So yes, a prosecutor can present both sides, and an honorable prosecutor, generally, you would think they would want to do that. But they don't have to, and because they don't have to, they don't. Listen, a lot of prosecutors get what I call cape syndrome. They start to believe they're Batman, and their job is, or Superman, truth, justice, and the American way. And they know that most of the people they're dealing with, most of these suspects and defendants are bad people. They're criminals. And so they start to cut corners. I mean, let's process these criminals as efficiently as possible. Let's not worry too much about all this due process stuff. We know they're bad guys. We know if they get back on the street, they're going to do bad things again. So let's just figure out a way to get them locked up. But due process exists for criminals for a reason, folks. And that's because it's the same due process that we get or don't get. If you deny due process of law, proper process of law, to the worst of us, you deny it to the best of us. That's how Rittenhouse gets dragged into a trial. That's how Zimmerman gets dragged into a trial. That's how Dean Cummings got dragged into a trial, because the system is built to process bad guys. But the protections we're supposed to have are for all of us, so they're available when a good guy gets fed into the system. So yes, a prosecutor can present both sides. They generally don't. And if they really don't want to, then they definitely don't. And the grand jury only hears one side of the story. So that's unfortunately how that works. And by the way, folks, we do this there. I mean, there's reasons for all of this, right? If you were fully presenting both sides and fully arguing out an adversarial process, well, that's what a trial is for, right? A grand jury is supposed to be a pre-trial step. So we're not doing that full adversarial process at the pre-trial step, because that's what the trial is for. The grand jury is supposed to be a screen, and the grand jury process works pretty well when you have honorable prosecutors you can trust to make those judgment calls, use their discretion in a fair way. But when you take that unbelievable power and discretion and authority that in the hands of a good prosecutor is, well, it's fairly implemented, and you take that same power and you put it in the hands of a bad prosecutor, a politically motivated prosecutor, you end up with Rittenhouse. So in the old days, when the prosecutors were largely just old guys in the community who'd been in the legal community forever, you could trust their judgment for the most part. We don't live in that world today. We live in a world today where George Soros is buying prosecutor seats and using that power for political purposes. So it sucks. Let's see. Yeah, in terms of, so folks are now in the Law Self-Defense member chat are sending me links for some of these cases, but I can't read the case during a live stream, obviously. But I am opening up the links in my browser. I'll take a look afterwards and see about speaking to those cases if it seems like it would be productive. And okay, let's see. All right. So I think I'm caught up on both the super chat and the Law Self-Defense member questions. Let me go to the next platinum member question. And by the way, folks, we're not getting through all these platinum questions. I got like another 15 of them here spooled up, and I don't have hours today, but we'll follow up with another Q&A show maybe next week when I'm on that motorcycle trip. All right, Steve E. He starts with, please feel free to edit my text for time. Okay, if you include it in the Q&A show. Okay. He says he'd rather not include his question in the show. All right, Steve, I'll skip it and I'll respond to you directly.